Our second speaker is Einion Gruffudd from the National Library of Wales. Einion has spent most of his career at the National Library of Wales working with manuscripts, information technology and digital collections. He's also established the Welsh National Broadcast Archive, which will be the focus of his talk today. Thank you. Over to you, Einion.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the opportunity to talk to you about the National Broadcast Archive. We have a lot of challenges, so it's great that Aeolian is bringing us all together and helping us to exchange ideas. And I've learned a lot already, so thank you, Giles, for showing what's going on with digital imaging. I'm going to talk about something quite different, and I am going to share my screen. Second, and I'm hopefully going to maximize it as well. Sorry. Hope this works. So, yes, I'm going to talk about the National Broadcast Archive at the National Library of Wales. You may not have heard much about it yet. We've actually started since August 2019. But as you know, there was a pandemic which started quite soon after that. And in fact, at that point, we got the opportunity by our key funders, the National Lottery Heritage Fund, to reassess the project and consider its sustainability. And we went back to them with some quite radical changes, and to be honest, some pretty major improvements, which are very exciting. And the Heritage Fund is very positive, has been very positive about these changes, but it does mean we have to go back through some processes of getting agreements with partners and going through this permission to start process again. I had hoped when I agreed to talk that we would have gone through that, but we haven't quite done it. So everything I'm saying is almost official, but we're not quite in action yet. I hope it's a matter of a week or two, I hope. So before I describe the Broadcast Archive, I think I should describe the National Library of Wales, just in case you're not familiar. We're actually, we're called the National Library of Wales, but we do much more than that, and more than newspapers as well. We have a lot of works of art, we have a lot of maps, we have a lot of photographs, we have, we're an archive, we're the most important archive in Wales by a long way, and also we have a very significant audiovisual collection. In fact, don't pay too much attention to the numbers in this slide because they are going up all the time, particularly the sound, video and film. And I'm going to show you now an incomplete slide. So because these are key partners in the Broadcast Archive project, which is ongoing. We have a few partners to add to this slide very soon, but I can't add them yet, and I could name them, but I better not. But I will name the key ones. Obviously, there's about 5 million almost being provided by the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Welsh Government is supporting us with £1 million as well. The library itself is providing funding. And also, I need to mention before I go on to maybe the BBC, the ITV collection we already have as a part at the National Library of Wales has been, quite fundamental. They're a big part of our broadcasting history, and it was why we were able to start building a broadcast archive. But the main dynamic has come from BBC, BBC Wales, who moved their headquarters from Llandarf in Cardiff to the centre of the city very recently, and in doing that they also changed their broadcasting technology, so they moved away from tapes and into more file-based digital technologies. And so what did they do with the tapes and the film, which are the foundation of all their broadcasting up to 2017? Well, they have donated them to the National Library of Wales, and these are some images of them material arriving here at the library just before the pandemic started, actually. And you can see a lot of film and video. There's sound there as well. There are large numbers, actually. We've got about 94,000 audio tapes coming in here, 70,000 video, and we think about 18,000 film cans. But they are not the key part of the Broadcast Archive project, in fact, but rather the digital files. BBC and other broadcasters actually have digitized the material as well before donating us the material to us, and we're actually receiving the digital files. So you can see here very large numbers of digital files coming into the library, where we will be storing them in our digital archive. So that's 131,700 video files provided by. There's more than one broadcaster involved there, and large number of HD video as well. Film items are almost all digitized. Might be one or two they didn't complete. The 93,000 sound items digitized does not include another 1,000 where they didn't quite manage to digitize. So there's actually a few more tapes there. And also, part of this broadcast archive we are establishing is the material library, National Library of Wales had already digitized. So there's, we think, 13,500 broadcast material from ITV mainly we had already digitized before the project started. We have also been collecting a large number of, we're recording material off air, which is digitized, and there's about 192,000 at the last count files, but that's growing all the time, obviously. That's material which, is not quite archival material, but in terms of quality, but it's as good as you would have watched at home. So, and there's some overlap between that and the archives we're receiving. And we are, as a part of the broadcast project now, going to be digitizing some of the still large amount of material we have, which hasn't yet been digitized. So we are going to be working on all of that. So this is a large archive for us. It's, we think, 485,000, something like that. Don't want to be too specific. So there's that many items, audiovisual, to be described, to be catalogued. And the question is, we know some, I hope you can see, some of the content, but how do you make this available to everybody in Wales so that everybody else can see it? Because that is the idea. And in fact, we are going to be doing that, because we are quite radically, really, going to be opening a dozen centres all over Wales where we will own terminals, and people will be able to actually watch all that digital content locally at these terminals. There are rights restrictions, which mean we can't put almost, not much of it can be put online, but we can, we will be making it available at local sites. So we have, that part of making it accessible is looking very promising. But actually, how are they going to find this material with so much material, which is, in fact, not just a television program, it's also the record of our history. It's also, what we've been doing for the 20th and 21st centuries is producing and watching this material. This is, the record of our history we have now, and what else can we do or make of that? There's a big question when the archive arrives at the National Library, at a national institution, a memory institution, instead of staying with a broadcaster. What is the difference? Well, there are big differences in terms of the research we'd like to do, what are the many hidden treasures we would like to uncover. We have different use cases, different reasons for finding this material. So the project is very much going to address all of that, and is going to include users of the archive, include the public in discovering this material. There's one more thing before I describe the AI side. Well, there's two more things, actually. This is one. This is one image of a script. It hasn't been possible until recently to get into the library to look at all the scripts, but we've got, I think, this is one page. We have, I think, about 1 million pages in 600, 700 boxes with thousands in each. mean, we do plan to digitize a good number of these scripts, which again are a record of the program's broadcast, and in fact they are often a record of programs where we don't have any other evidence of the broadcast, because not everything, I mean, earlier live broadcasts, there wasn't a tape of that archive of that broadcast, but we do have the script. So this is, sometimes overlapping, sometimes not overlapping the broadcast archive we have. So that's one very important component I want to mention. And there's one other thing to explain the way we're thinking about this. I'm going to show you a project which we did about a decade ago, the digitisation of Welsh newspapers. And this transformed that collection. It transformed our website. It transformed the use made of the collection, and in fact it transformed our understanding of our history and the research people were able to make. Because what we did, we digitized all those pages. We applied OCR. Actually, it was an external company to do that OCR. So actually, the machine who can understand these Welsh newspapers best is actually based in France, but that's another matter. But it did actually have a fantastic result. And I'm searching here for Rebecca. Happens to be a theme related to the 1840s, which is an interest for me. And if you make that search, you'll find, all these newspaper articles from the 1840s related to the Rebecca riots. And I noticed what happened. Books have been published since we made this website available, and they had discovered on our website that the Rebecca riots were not actually a small, well, there were quite a large rising in southwest Wales, but they were at the very least copycat incidents in Anglesey in North Wales, which we were not aware of. So we are finding that the narrative about our history is being changed by people discovering new information and using this source as a part of the research and as a part of books being published now. So this gives us, therefore, that's where we're aiming for and what we want to achieve with the broadcast archive. How can we do something similar for the broadcast archive and cause such a transformation, which we really think should happen in people's research and in people's experience of our website. So this is the main slide I have, which describes now the artificial intelligence plans we have for the project. So first of all, this is an important one where we can actually go right into the middle of the artificial intelligence with voice to text. There is obviously plenty of commercial methods of extracting text in the English language out of audio files. It's not a simple process, but there are many ways of doing it. In the Welsh language, it's slightly more difficult. It's a slightly more difficult language in some ways with accents. And also, the technology hasn't developed as much. So we are going to be involved with partners in Bangor University in North Wales called Canolfan Bedwyr. And we will be developing the voice to text function so that we can actually, hopefully with good accuracy, it does actually work already to some extent, but hopefully with improved accuracy, extract text describing, in particular, the big use case is our audio collection. The metadata we have, describing all our collection is quite varied in quality, but with the audio collection, there's very little actually description of what's on those 92,000 digital files I mentioned, half of which are Welsh language digital files. So we need, a machine to help us understand what's there. And that's the big use case where we'll be developing primarily this function and getting it to work and learning about what we actually have and discovering these treasures, who was being mentioned, what places and what subjects were being covered. So we have a big AI plan going on there. And related to that then is crowdsourcing, which, we're in the early stages still, and the crowdsourcing functions can do a lot of things for us. They can help, volunteers can help us a lot in many different ways, but in particular, we will include them in the method of correcting voice to text outputs, so that we can show them the text the machine thought the audio file included, and they can say whether the machine actually understood Welsh or not, and whether it can be corrected, and that feedback can be given back to the machine, and we can train it further using volunteers. It's something we've seen happen elsewhere, so it's something we'd like to develop ourselves, of course. So that's one part of the project. We'll be working with volunteers and working on that. Automated keywords. Obviously, when you get big descriptions of videos and sound, and we will have a lot actually, we will have of the these videos, and we won't just have a voice to text output. We have scripts, we have subtitles with videos, we have sometimes detailed time-based metadata as well. So there's a lot of text available to describe these videos, and even more when we've built it up further. It's not always useful to have all that text when you want to search for something, so we need to identify keywords in all that content. And we've already started to work on that. And to be honest with you, I didn't realize when we started that it was an artificial intelligence task, but it very clearly is. And also, it's very clearly something that applies not just to broadcasting, but to the whole library. So we need to return to this subject very soon and work out, the content. This process is context sensitive. It's also, depends on the content, depends on what the users are looking for. So we'll need to return to this quite soon. We're using an ANIF tool is what we've been working on, and clearly there's a lot of training to be done on that machine to enable it to deliver the best value experience for users, and in terms of discovering material effectively in a system as we aim to do. And also this is of course related to this linked data aspect we need to develop, because the keywords need to be similar to the keywords applied in other parts of the collection and elsewhere. And the linked data will work far more effectively when we have a certain standard of keywords. So we need to work quite hard on that aspect. But the linked data also, there's a lot of people working and doing great stuff on linked data. What we'd like to do, though, is focus a bit on the user experience of using linked data, because you could see the National Library can tell the story in many stories in many ways, because we might have the news item, could be video, could be radio, there could be pictures, the articles, books written about that particular item, and in fact we may have in our archives the minutes of the meeting of whichever political event was in the news, for example. So we can link to everything. And how can we provide that experience to users in a meaningful way moving forward? This is quite a tricky thing to do. So we want to investigate, therefore, the linked data from the user perspective. That's one of the things we will be developing during the project. We have it's a 5-year project. Obviously, a couple of years have gone by, so we might be asking HLF for an extra year to fit all this research in, and that leaves us then with an online exhibition, which is the user linked data experience. So that's when we hopefully will have brought a lot of this together, and it is a sort of a target of giving people an experience of searching not just broadcast audiovisual material, but everything, and discovering a story told in many different ways. And so that's something we're aiming for. That's sort of the final part of the project. So there we are. That's how best I think I can at least describe the Broadcast Archive project, but describing the content, of course, involves a lot of artificial intelligence. So I think that's all I have at this point.